This is We the Sales Engineers podcast, show 229.
Welcome to We the SEs podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramzi Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another episode. I am your host, Ramzi Majaba, and I enjoy talking about sales engineering. I don't know why. I seem to enjoy doing that. But on the other hand, I also enjoy talking to salespeople. One of the biggest hurdles I had to overcome going from engineering into sales engineering is the fact that there's sales in the title. And that's why I like to talk to salespeople. There's a lot of misconceptions about sales in general. And I like to clarify them. I like to talk to good salespeople, those who know what they're doing, just to understand a little bit more about how they think. And today I talked to Jason Mark Campbell, who went from selling chocolates to writing a book called Selling with Love. You don't think about love when we think about sales. It's just the way he describes it and the way he explains it makes a lot of sense to me. I'm not the one to use the word love easily, so you may agree or disagree with that whole concept, but whatever Jason talks about makes a lot of sense. I mean, we're being ethical. The way we talk to customers, we're trying to help them solve problems. A lot of it's just overcoming some self-limiting beliefs about sales. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about sales with Jason, and let me know what you guys think at the end. Monsieur Campbell, comment ça va?
Ça va bien, et vous?
Well, that's the extent of my French, so I'm good.
Nailed it.
Well, it's nice to meet you. It's nice to have you on the podcast. For those people who don't know you, do you mind sharing a little bit of your background, who you are and what you do, and why you wanted to come on the podcast?
Yeah, fantastic. Well, first off, thanks for having me. One
pleasure.
of the things I want to make as a promise is for anybody who's a sales engineer who's going to be tuning in, you're not going to waste your time. I'm hoping to really shift your mindset around how selling can actually be an act of love, which I know can sound weird, but that's a bit of what I speak about now. Originally from Ottawa, Canada, such as yourself. And I had a chance to work in a personal growth ed tech company. So a technology company delivering educational services, mostly related to spirituality, mindfulness, productivity, and worked in real estate as well. And more recently, though, I've been focused on my own sales training, wrote a book, an Amazon bestseller, Selling with Love. And it's about how to earn with integrity and expand your impact. And one of the biggest things I've noticed is, if you want to play in a world of duality, I'll use it to my advantage and state that there's good and bad people. And it seems like the bad people find themselves in sales and all the good people hate sales. And that's a problem because we need a lot of good people doing good sales to make the world a better place. So I'm just trying to play my part, teaching a lot of people that want to do good in the world, how to embrace sales, do it the right way, and help solve big problems we had on this planet.
I'm going to push back a little bit. I
Go
think
ahead.
in sales, there's good people and bad people. It's not just the bad people that make it to sales. It's just you only hear about the bad ones. It's
100%.
Yeah, it's
100%.
For someone doing their job, being a good salesperson, good person, you don't hear about it because it's normal or it's supposed to be. But you hear the horror stories. You're in real estate, right?
I've done some real estate in the past, and this is the bias, right? Our negativity bias. So if something negative happens in sales, we remember it. That's why most people will say sales is bad, because we were kind of trained to avoid the danger much more than remember the good. And so as such, we can have one negative sales experience, either directly felt or through a story of someone, and that can form our judgment for years to come. And the problem with that is if you're someone with a genuine solution you want to bring to people and you have a great product and you care about the people, you want to make a difference, but when it comes to using the tools of the process of selling, you hesitate because you don't want to be like those salespeople that you've put in a box. Then it makes you hold back. And we don't want that. We want to make sure that you get to come with the full force of I'll call it love in my definition of trying to solve these problems for sure.
So before we get there, I am curious how it seems that you're in love with selling. How did you fall in love with selling and how did you fall into selling?
Yeah. Well, I have a cute story. I love the cute story because it's kind of my origin story. I lived in the streets, stayed on my friend's couch. I have none of that. Unfortunately, no rags to riches. I would rather say Came from a small town, good family. And I had one of these activities in high school. I think this was the first time I had to go do some real sailing, right? In high school, they put me in a hardcore sales road with quotas and everything. And it was to sell chocolates for a charity in high school. I'm kidding here. There was basically this initiative to sell these chocolate covered almonds called the world's finest, which I think was marketing team were lying a little bit. But I ended up going door to door and knocking at my neighbor's door and just saying like, "Hey, do you want to buy some chocolate for a toonie?" Now, for those who are Canadians, obviously know what a toonie is. If you don't, it's a $2 coin. We don't need $2 bills. And so this was interesting because the first neighbor I knocked to, they're just like, "Oh, that sounds like a good deal." We didn't have that. "Oh, it's unhealthy." Well, is there gluten in there? That didn't happen when I was younger. So people bought the chocolate. They were happy. I collected money for a charity. I was like, "Wow, this is fun." So I kept doing it for a few doors. Now, the interesting thing that happened, and this might be the origin of the whole love side, right? Is I think by the sixth or seventh door I go knock to, the lady that opens the doors, when I say my sales pitch, which was like, "Do you want to buy some chocolate? Goes for charity. It's only $2." She's like, "Well, let me see if my daughter wants any." And lo and behold, the daughter comes down the stairs, beautiful girl, my age. And I end up getting her number, ends up being one of my first girlfriends. And so, lo and behold, Selling with Love was born.
Yeah.
Cute story, but
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is, I found myself in various sales roles growing up, selling swimming pools, and that was just fun because basically you're transforming people's backyards into a swimming pool. Like it was a fun process, and people generally were really happy about that process of buying. When I got into real estate, I had good products to sell, which made me excited about doing it. So I kind of fell into it. I don't know if it was by accident, although graduating from university, didn't know what I wanted to do in my life. All the management training programs were about how to make 50,000 a year. And I was like, I want more. And sales was one of those paths that I could take. And it became really fun to do. Started getting good at it after freaking out the first times doing it. And the rest is history.
All right. I want to dig in a little bit. Why did you freak out the first times you were doing it? What happened?
Telephone sales. So one of my first hardcore sales job, the real one this time, was working for a real estate agency out in Ottawa. And what I had to do is book appointments for realtors. And they were telling me that you're going to be an inside sales agent. It's a beautiful thing. We have lists of qualified leads. And what you're going to do is just read this script and you'll see it'll magically book appointments. And I'm like, "Oh, this sounds like cold calling. I don't know if I just want to be a telemarketer." They're like, "No, no, no. It's not cold calling. It's reverse prospecting." I was like, "Ooh, fancy. I don't know what that means." At the dawn of the online marketing age, right? And so first they give me a list of these cold leads from like a month ago. And they're just like, "Yeah, just dial the number, follow the script." I was like, "Okay." First one requested a list of properties online. I'm like, "Great." Follow the script. And I'm just like, "Hi, this is Jason from ABC Real Estate. Just want to let you know that the list of properties you requested was sent to you by email. Is that okay?" And they're like, "Yeah, thanks." Click. And they hang up on me. And I'm like, and now my voice is shaking. And for those who are watching on video, you will notice that I'm very pasty white, which means under pressure, I will turn very pink. And that is not a fun color to have the moment the boss walks in and is wondering, "Why are you sweating in pink?" And so I was freaking out. I was like, "I don't think I can do this." The rejection just felt like I died. And then he's like, he comforted me, thank God, at that moment, saying, like, "That doesn't usually happen. I swear, just try 5 more times." And then got over that nervousness in my voice, had a nice client, walked them through the script, and then it became a game of numbers. So I feel like in your journey as a salesperson, you need to go through that fear of rejection, and it just comes through a couple repetitions, and then you're like, "Okay, this isn't physically hurting me. I can do more."
Yeah, I think the big thing is a lot of times people quit after that first time. It's too much. I don't want that feeling, and don't give themselves the chance to get better at it. It's like anything we start when we were younger, we don't remember that we sucked at walking. Right? We didn't know how to walk. It took practice, and for some reason, as we get older, we're if we do something new, we're expecting to be like aces right out of the gate. And sometimes you just need patience. So I love that. And at what point did you find a sales job that you loved beyond just like cold calling?
Well, the calling got really fun, but I kind of
How
grew into it.
so? How did it get fun?
Oh, it got fun because then it was a game of numbers, and then I had a little sales team with me, and then we'd have these habits. Now, this is me, early 20s, right? So what are we doing? We're popping up YouTube. The birth of YouTube was out there, and we're watching these like sales rah-rah videos just to have fun to start the day. Scene from Boiler Room, some Glengarry Glen Ross scene where we're giggling, and then we're like, all right, we all have a list of numbers. Let's go. Whoever can book the most appointments. And then you have some fun, and then you're following the script, and there's this kind of evolution that happens where you're like, okay, you follow the script, then you get a couple success. You're like, this is great. And then I start getting a bit more confident. I get a little looser on the script and I start following my own prompts. Then my results start going down. Then I'm like, remember, follow the script. And the script was well designed. So I could always fall back to the script and then start just having more confidence in saying the same script, but it's the way it was being delivered. You'd start tweaking on that and just played with those parameters. And then we get some results. Oh, and then like we would get paid when the realtor sold the actual property from an appointment that was booked. So you'd have like 3 months down the line, some of the results of the efforts you had done would start paying the dividends, or rather the commissions. And that was really fun as well. So we built a little crew. We were making good money. We were working like crunch hours. So it was like 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. We'd all be in the office because that was the time to reach everyone and like learn techniques, start dialing really fast with the fingers. And then like you automate your process and you get in the zone. And there's something about that. It's a bit of a dopamine rush when you get in that sales zone. And I would say that would be the fun part.
Okay, cool. So basically me asking you the question, when did it get fun, was that's the answer to it. Okay.
Pretty much. But yeah, that was the beginnings.
Okay. When did you start thinking about like sales in general? Because you don't write a book if you're not thinking about your craft. Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of us, we just go through the motions. This is what we do, and you must be self-aware a little bit to figure out like, oh, I could write a book and I could teach something to someone. What point did you start thinking like, hey, I can do it this way or versus that way, or like just a little bit deeper about sales and not just going through the motions?
Yeah. So, fast forwarding through the journey, I ended up starting a company with some friends. We were buying and selling US real estate, then found myself working in a personal growth education company that had a big tech component as well. And one of the things around personal growth is they make you do a lot of goal setting, vision boards, and a lot of stuff about future pacing. And I remember back in 2013, they were asking me, what are the types of things you'd like to do to contribute to your growth? And one of the cool things to put on that list was write a book. But at that time, I had no idea I was planning to write a book on sales. But your environment starts reflecting to you some of the things that are naturally talents that you might have. And wherever I would go, whichever company I'd work for, I would always be known as the sales guy. And people would just be like, Jason just loves selling. I wouldn't even be in a sales role, but I would find ways to sell my ideas to the leadership team or to like sell another department to do things a certain way. And I always had this natural enthusiasm. So everyone would just label me as the sales guy. And then I brought a lot of sales initiative in a company that being very personal growth oriented, which had a lot of resistance to sales as a term themselves. Like the organization was actually a publishing company for personal growth with a tech component, but the term sales seemed to still have a lot of resistance in that organization. And I found myself telling people, no, we need to be proud with the fact that we're selling people a transformation. Like we're getting them to actually like change the way they live, make a difference. The impact is huge. Why would we have resistance about claiming how boldly we will sell this to the world so that we can change lives? And this ended up being the rhetoric that always came from me. And so it started with just putting something on a vision board. Next thing was an opportunity that came to give a public a speech on stage. And during that time, this was back in 2015, I was trying to think what would be a topic I should write about. And everyone kept saying, yeah, Jason loves selling. I was like, well, maybe it's because I'm selling from a place of love. And I just put together a 5-minute presentation around why I think selling is the greatest expression of love. And that idea had to nurture, fester for another 4 or 5 years until I realized that as I'm doing sales training, as I'm wanting to be an advocate to get the ethical businesses out there to learn the power of selling and doing it from a place of integrity, the one thing that needs to be done is you need to write a book so that you can clarify your ideas, you can distribute it to the masses and actually start making a difference. So that was a logical move. And lo and behold, took 2.5 years and now I get to show it to you, the product of my labor.
Can you show it straight to the camera so people can see it?
Yeah. Selling with love.
Spending. Okay. Nice. I'll have a link to that book in the show notes. Okay. there's so many things that you just said. One thing I want to comment on is, like, I'm from an engineering background, right? And when I worked in support initially at Alcatel-Lucent
Mm.
networking company, and I hated salespeople. Right, I hated salespeople. I fell into sales engineering. I didn't know what it was when I first joined. I learned as we went, and then I realized, like, if it wasn't for salespeople selling the product that we're working on, every individual who worked on the product wouldn't have a job. And if it wasn't for the people working on the product, salespeople wouldn't have anything to sell either. But no one hates the software designer. Everyone hates the salespeople. So it kind of did a mental shift in my mind. And when I talk to my customers and they start nagging on my salesperson, I thought, like, you have salespeople too. Right? They work for your company, and that's how you get paid. And sometimes they don't like that, but sometimes it actually pops on, like, allows them to think about something. Go ahead.
There's an interesting thing I talk about in my book is we did a live event and we had sold tickets. We had a sales team that was selling these tickets, $5,000 for every seat at this conference. And we had just finished the conference and it ended with a sales pitch. And me and the sales guy the next morning, we're sitting down. We're like, all right, how many leads are you working? He's like, oh man, I got like 20 people. I'm going to WhatsApp them all. I'm going to send them the link to buy. Hopefully we can bring in a couple, like close at least 100,000. It would be a really good month. So I'm going to try to close as much as I can. How about you? Yeah, I got another 40. I just need to send him a mass email as well. See if we can get more leads. How much do you think we can collect? I'm like, man, I think we could get $250,000. If we could get $250,000, that would be a good day. And so we're working on this. We're retroing and like we're finding out strategies to maximize the amount of money we can collect. And I tell that story to see, like, how are people reacting emotionally to hearing two sales guys talking about how they can close as much money, and how different would it be towards thinking about two engineers that are doing, oh, we could do product innovation here and increase the consumption, and we could have people retain themselves on the platform more, and then we could make sure, like, the emotion is completely different because the aspect of money
Money,
usually comes with a lot of charge.
money is evil, right? Except we use it to, like, live, right? Um,
Mm.
and there's nothing wrong, in my humble opinion. There's nothing wrong for getting paid for a service you're offering other people, especially if it's useful. If it's useless service, then yeah, like, don't pay that person. Usually, the market takes care of that, unless it's a scammer.
Mhm.
But yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
No,
did
I
you have
mean
a thought?
that's pretty much it. Like I label money within my definition of sales as nothing else than stored energy. I think it's not the greatest evil; it's the greatest invention we've ever had. It's basically we invented batteries for value,
Yeah, yeah,
so we
it's a
could
tool.
store it. We could
Yeah,
store it and then exchange it at a recognized medium for everyone else. So it's fantastic. And when we start demonizing money, I think we start actually holding back ourselves from a lot of the opportunities that could come our way. We hold ourselves back from some of the happiness we can have with having more abundance in our life. And if you resist sales as a byproduct from your resistance around money, I think it's an absolute shame because sale everything that is within our physical reach, like where you live, things you have. If you're listening to this on any kind of device, that was all the product of a sales process that designed everything in your life.
not just that. The individual is a sales product. Like, if I want to get a job, I have to sell myself. Right? And if I hate sales, how am I going to do that? How am I going to learn to get better at interviews where I am literally selling myself as the product to the company who's willing to pay for it? So yeah, and obviously we love ourselves. Hopefully people love themselves and they're able to talk about themselves easier. It gets a little iffy when the product sucks and we're trying to sell it, and that gets harder. I wanted to discuss a little bit. You mentioned fear-based versus love-based. I would have imagined it would have been love-based versus hate-based. So I'm curious why the term. Can we dig into the term fear-based? Like, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, because you're right. Most people would assume the opposite of love is hate. But, when you have a very, let's say a customer that is really pissed off, like that's still a good customer. That's someone that had an emotional charge and cared about expressing how important it was for them to have a problem solved. And so I think, you often talk about the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference.
Yeah,
And in my case, when I talk about the opposite of love, it's actually fear. And when you're selling from a place of fear, this is where all the shame or the guilt that comes the resistance, the procrastination. In sales, there's a huge emotional component. And in my book, what I do is I actually define sales as an energy exchange between conscious beings. Okay. And I use the term energy again because I see money as stored energy. Products and service are basically a product of energy. And then you exchange it. There's a flow of energy that happens, right? When you know what you offer is so much more than what you ask in return, that's when the emotion of love actually is what balances the equation. So emotion always happens in every sales transaction. So in simple terms, if it's coming from a place of fear, is that somewhere in this transaction, there's a thought that what you're offering is not more than what you're asking in return. You talked about the shitty product. If you know that when you take $1,000 from a client and you're going to give them a product that's probably going to be, the real value they'll get from that is maybe 500. Oh, you'll feel guilty about selling this. If you had to sell this to a family member, you'd be like, "Mm." And if you're asked to sell that to others, that can be a real um, duality from what you're told to do and what you actually feel. And so that's where the scarcity, the fear comes from. So you might be ashamed of selling it at a subconscious level or conscious level. And then guess what? You'll try to find any distraction to do everything else except do what is necessary to make more sales. Now, if you're within a sales organization, you might have quotas and pressures that kind of build a culture to ignore those little intuitive pulses. But at the same time, that time going to get a coffee, you'll just take your time a little more. Do I call them now? They're probably on break. I'm going to wait. And then nobody's there in the morning. I need to have my coffee first. And you have your coffee, and then you're like, well, it's almost lunchtime. People are probably already out to lunch. I'm going to call them this afternoon. And you start creating these reasons to procrastinate. But deep down, it's basically because the activity of selling can actually feel painful if you identify that doing sales is a dirty thing. Then you don't want to be a dirty person. So you're going to try to resist this as much as possible. If the product is crap, every sale you make makes you a crap person. So you don't want to face that neither. And then all the beliefs you have around like selling are going to start just putting the brakes on. So as much as you try to watch the motivational talks and you're having quotas and goals, if your foot and your mindset's on the brake to resist sales, you're going to be spinning your wheels. And so what I often tell people is looking at how you're actually having fear around sales. What are those fears? And there's often ones people will think, oh, you're annoying them and they're going to you're going to be an annoying salesperson. You hate salesperson yourself. You're not going to be able to get the results. You're going to talk to people who are just going to be annoyed that you call them. Whatever are the fears that come up, sometimes you just need to take a moment to write them down and get clear on okay, is that a real fear? And if so, what's the worst that could happen? And then from there, start making a plan to say, okay, well, if what could I do to actually minimize the chance of that happening? Or if it does happen, it's not as bad as it needs to be. And so you want to do a lot of fear conquering before you start going from a place of love and selling from that space.
That's interesting. The one thing I want to talk about, about the crappy product. Right?
Mm.
I worked in different industries, and I haven't seen a perfect product yet. But when it's your product and you're trying to sell, and it does one thing badly, it crashes, or whatever it is. Now in your mind, your product is crap, and that's one fear that I've had in the past. Hey man, how can we sell this product? And we don't notice that even though our product has its issues, it still solves the problem for a customer, which is why they keep buying. If you sold it once and no one ever buys it again, sure, okay, maybe the product is crap, maybe you don't know how to sell. But I've worked with customers, they complain about the product, it has all these issues, and they keep buying it.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to fix the problems, but also that you are fixing someone else's problem because they're buying it from you. So it could be just in your head, which is pretty much what you said. I like that.
Well, there's another thing to keep in mind, and this is where some people are a bit too much into their head and not caring enough about the customer's needs. And did you know that Lamborghinis and Ferraris are some of the most unreliable cars? They can break down, and if they do break down, do you know how expensive it is to fix those cars? And then imagine that you're working at a Lamborghini dealership, and then somebody walks in, and you're maybe making what, 80,000 a year, right? So buying a Lamborghini absolutely out of your budget. Matter of fact, you're not the customer avatar at all, which you have a responsibility. You're a sales representative and you're selling cars. Person walks in there like, wow, Lamborghini. You're like, huh? How much is it? And is this the best model? And you just go to them and you're like, you know what? There's a lot of reliability issues with this one. And if it breaks down, you're gonna have to pay a lot. If you'd actually look at this Mercedes, those Mercedes are like, you'll pay a third the price and they have even more features. And that might be a way better deal than you. I would never buy this Lamborghini. That is like the most selfish thing you could do as a salesperson because it's all about your own ideas of what's good or bad. When you have no idea that that person that just walked in, maybe they just sold their business and cashed out $10 million. And one of their biggest things that they told themselves once they cashed out 10 million was they were going to buy that Lamborghini that they've always wanted since they were a child. They don't give an F about the maintenance and anything else. And you didn't give an F about who they were, what their needs were, and what there was the problem they were trying to solve. Now, I love this example because I have a feeling that most people listening to this might have an interest in cars. And secondly, it just shows blatantly what happens when you're actually not empathizing for the customer, but you're stuck in your head. So if you're out there selling a software that solves a particular issue, you're going to do your best to actually sell to the right people. And not all people need your solution, but there's some target markets that I'm sure you've identified, and you usually qualify a customer and you realize, wow, we can make an impact for them. They're definitely the target. There's going to be some value. You can be honest too. You can be like, not the perfect thing, but we're going to solve your problem and do what we can to make sure the minimization of issues does happen. Nobody expects a perfect product. They do expect their problem to be solved. And so if you're going to continuously improve on the product and you're going to go and take a chance, like selling with love, it's interesting because one of the things I really break down in the book is a level I call the rational sabotage, which is when you start like over explaining, giving them as much paperwork, and you're so worried that something might go wrong when you sell this to that person that you're just trying to give them as much information so they make the decision themselves because you don't want to take responsibility that you've quote unquote pushed them to make a decision and it ends up not being perfect. But there's something about love, which is love sometimes can be a bit messy, and that's okay. It doesn't prevent it from being beautiful. Just like a sale, if you have the best of intentions, like you genuinely care for this customer, you have a product that you know solves their problem, and you care about the difference this is going to make in their life, then please go use the tools necessary, follow the processes, and use the techniques so that people can understand that you're there to serve them. You want to put a product in their hands, and you can take the risk that, okay, maybe there's a chance that it won't be perfect. But if you're working for the right organizations, you probably have policies in place to ensure that if something does go wrong, you'll minimize the damage.
I love that. So that's a struggle a lot of sales engineers face because our biggest concern is credibility. Like, if I tell you this is going to work for you, it better work for you. Otherwise, I lost my credibility as a sales engineer, and that's all I have. I'm not getting paid the big bucks that salespeople are getting paid. Like, that's all I have, and I want to make sure that I'm doing it right. And I'm a hybrid now, so I do both roles, and I realize that even if it's not perfect, if I can help the customer make a decision, I'm not lying to them in any way, shape, or form. But I'm not going to be able to discover every little thing that they want and need and fix. But I know that, hey, if you have a bad experience with this product, I will figure out a way to make you happy, right? Like, because I love them. Like, they're my customers. I have ties to them, and just having that thought, like, I will fix whatever problem you face, whether it's commercial or technical. Like, it doesn't have to be, or I'll fix the product for you, but I'll figure out a way to make you happy. That shifted my mentality a lot. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that right there is a testament to what energy you're coming from, right? Like if you're coming from the heart, you're coming from love, right? Is like you care about these clients, these accounts, like you want them to have success with the product. And as a sales engineer, you actually hit the nail on the head, Ramsey, which is you're trying to solve their problem. So like you actually care about that. So one thing I would say as a caveat is be honest. Like, I don't think you need to be making false promises, especially as a sales engineer. Like, you are a trusted advisor to these people. You will help them make the decision. That's what they're counting on you for. And so you have so much knowledge. And most people, they actually feel comfort when you make an admission of something negative about the product. Like, I remember, it was HubSpot. I had a sales engineer from HubSpot. I was integrating their account. And the sales engineer said something along the line saying like, listen, this feature is still in beta, so it has a chance of crashing, but you're going to be one of the first ones to use it. I can help you integrate it, but don't come crying if you see that there's some issues with it because we're still having it in beta. And to me, I was like, sold. I want to be the first one testing this feature. I'm okay with taking the risk. I'm a sales guy. Bring on the risk. We're going to take chances here. But I think once you make like call it a damaging confession or a small confession of a shortcoming, you will become that trusted advisor. Because I don't think any person needs to be just painting all sunshines and rainbows in any transaction because nobody expects that.
Yeah. A caveat to your caveat, I guess, is don't shoot yourself in the foot, right? Like there's a balance, right? It's in beta, we're working on it, we're fixing it, versus, oh, we can't do what you're asking us to do without actually thinking about, like, are there alternatives? Like, a friend of mine, his name is Chris White. He wrote The 6 Habits of Highly Effective Sales Engineers. Free plug for Chris right here. And he talks about the qualified no. And that's something that salespeople are afraid of. They're afraid of sales engineers coming in just saying no without actually understanding the question. And that's happened to me on several occasions where I get an email, me and a fellow SE, hey, can you do this? And his response is no. And my response is, why do you want to do that? Oh, because we want to achieve that. Oh yeah, we have a separate product for that. So we went from a no to a sale.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Just so, yeah, like, be honest about your product. Just don't shoot yourself in the foot. I guess that's my point I'm trying to make. Your book, you mentioned, was it 4 or 5 levels of emotions?
Well, the emotions, if I keep things simple, I'll say love and hate, but I actually break it down into 4 levels into the book, where it starts from shame and guilt, fear and pride, rational sabotage, and then you get all the way to love. And once you want to get into the love space, I speak about the 5 different loves you need in selling.
All right, let's talk about that. What are these
Yeah.
5 different loves?
So there's a bit of clarity you want in every sales process that you have. And when you want to come from a place of love, there's 5 major loves that I speak about. And the number one thing is what I call loving the impact of every sale you make. And that's just being so clear on the difference you're going to make to people's lives from selling this product or service. Now, I don't know about you, but I would feel pretty crappy if I was working for Philip Morris and I was getting more people hooked on cigarettes. It just doesn't align with my values. For some, it could, but for me, I know that's like, nah, I don't want to see a world where I'm getting more people addicted to a substance that, puts a toll on our tax system and not our taxes, but our healthcare system, makes people die prematurely, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just not aligning with my values. But if you're in a kind of sales role, I do think that there needs to be a love for the impact, the difference that you make. And I break this down even further where I say, be clear on the difference. And when I say impact, I'm speaking about the problems you solve. Like the reason this product exists should be around solving a problem. And so, what is that problem? Are you clear on the difference you make for the client? And I get people to have some crystal clear visibility on that impact. Because once you have that, you start understanding why it's so important for you to sell. You have way less hesitation. You can make a plug again now for Simon Sinek saying start with why, but loving the impact is the why of the sale, right? And one of the things I say to my clients to kind of turbocharge their motivation around what they sell is don't just stop at the impact you make for the client, but start thinking about the impact it actually has as a ripple in the world. So, for example, I'm going to use HubSpot because I'm assuming most people within your audience would know what HubSpot is as a platform, especially if they're a sales engineer. I'll use it. You could be out there and you're like, great, I get to help, specific companies get, better sales results, et cetera. But there's a world impact that happens as well. It's like, what if I'm actually empowering small and medium enterprises to be more efficient in their sales process, nurturing them to actually thrive in a market where only super massive, international corporations seem to be thriving. Now we actually get to support the little guys and the growing guys because they're the backbone of the economy. And that's so important to support. And having a solid sales process with the right technology that lets you reach the right clients ensures that these get to survive. And if that's close to my values and I want to see more of that in the world, then I can see how important my role in the sale is in bringing about a world that I want to see. Does this make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's measuring the ripple. And so taking a step back, and whatever software you have is like, what's the ripple? If I'm selling this to thousands of companies, who am I selling it to? What is that doing to them? The fact that they're more successful, more profitable, get to grow, have more impact. What is that doing for the people that have jobs there? And what does that do to the impact of the clients that they serve? Holy shit, this has a big impact. And now you're realizing this is important for me to do. And where I close the kind of trifecta motivator for impact is just being selfish in a beautiful way. Why
Yeah,
are you selling for you? You said this earlier, Ramsey, which is like, it's okay to make money. And what do you want to do with this money? Do you want more freedom? Do you want to nurture your family, your community? Do you want to do something you love and sell a product you enjoy? That is okay. And get clear on all of this so you can actually love the impact of every sale you make. That's the first love.
nice. That was great. I don't want to add anything to it because it was perfect the way it is. So what is the second love?
I'll walk you through the rest. We're gonna machine gun this.
All right, let's go.
Once you're clear on the impact, the second thing you want to get clear on is the client, loving the client. I'm not talking about romantic love, although I did sell some chocolates and that, escalated quickly. It's not what I'm encouraging. What I am saying is the way to love the client is actually to understand the client, like taking the time to understand who they are, what their problems are, and caring for the difference you're going to make in their life. So, who are they specifically? The target market. How much do you understand them? How much do you have conversations with them? To just be curious about them so that when you have sales conversation, you can empathize with them. And then what makes you the best person or the best company or the best product to serve them specifically? So loving the client is all about how do you show up in the best way to serve who you know exactly and specifically who you serve as well. So building that understanding, making sure that you're serving the right customer because listen, your product can be great, but the value that you provide to an individual varies vastly based on who they are. Again, using the Lamborghini example, if you're trying to get somebody to pull out a business loan for $250,000 to buy a Lamborghini when they're making 40,000 a year, first off, they wouldn't be able to get that loan. But that's not a product that's good for them. But the one that sold his business for 100 million or 10 million, whatever, and they decide that's important to them, that is valuable to them. So all value is not the same based on who you sell it to. In a technology example, let's say you have a SaaS solution that's costing 20,000 and you're trying to sell it to a company that's just got, 30,000 in the bank and haven't made their first sale and you're giving them some technology to build some ERP stuff, some craziness, not necessary. But if you're working into an organization that you realize the cost savings you're going to give them are going to be in the hundreds of thousands and your product is only going to cost 50 and people will have less stress, now you can get excited about selling it to them because the impact and the value is real. So number 2, love the client, understand them.
It got me thinking about something. So it's also about protecting the client from other things, like just specifically a friend of mine, a client of mine, and he's a friend. He had health issues last month, and he had promised a PO. And I'm getting calls from all levels of my organization asking me like, "Hey, when's the PO coming? Call the customer again, whatever." I was like, and they would have bypassed me if I didn't actually protect them and like put my foot down. It's like, this guy has health issues. I know he promised, but I'm not calling him and ruining like whatever he's going through just so I can get a PO and a bit of commission. So it's that's the first thing that popped in my mind as you were talking.
It's caring, man. You have to care for who you're selling to. We're all humans here and you're trying to solve problems. So you have to look at the nuances when these types of situations show up. Are you there with the best interest of the client in mind? And, without compromising the company, you can make that judgment call. And I think you made the right one. So there you go.
I hope so. The thing also, the client will never know, right? The client will never know that, hey, like 5 people try to call you and I stopped them, but it's still for me, it was the best decision for me at the time.
There's one thing I don't speak a lot about in my book, but is actually a very important topic, which is sales culture. All right. And you say the client will never know, but I think it would be very important within your organization that that story be highlighted in training material to build a healthy sales culture. Because when you start highlighting the kinds of stories, being like, hey, and I don't know where the story is going to end, but I have an idea that when this person gets better, and then they're like, okay, you follow up with them,
Yeah,
and
the
you
PO is
decide to
coming.
highlight. Yeah.
The PO is coming this week.
So when you start highlighting stories about how you've taken care of a client and you've been compassionate and caring, you start encouraging your salespeople to actually care about the client, as opposed to a toxic sales culture will be like, oh my God, this guy just had an accident. He was on so many like drugs, but we still got him to sign the contract and we banked in $250,000. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Different energy. Right. This is what I call it the fear paradox. And I don't even want to go there, but that's where your toxic salespeople live. But yeah. So again, you start with the impact, then you love the client. If I go down the list, the third one I bring up is loving the product. And you've highlighted this before. And the motto here is don't fake it, just make it. And I know we're talking to some sales engineers. So I say, make it awesome as much as you can and communicate it effectively. See how you can improve it, and then go out there and make it available for the people.
If I can maybe switch it a little bit, maybe not love the product in my opinion, but love what the problem the product solves, because that will take it from thinking about like, oh, we don't support this feature, and yet I still have to love the product, versus like, hey, I solved that problem. And so that's for sales engineers, it might be easier to relate. At least that's what I think.
Well, it's interesting because when I first started developing this methodology, I had broken it down in less loves, and it was to address this specific issue because I realized I needed to separate the model to make sure that what comes first is loving the impact. That's where the product lies.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's where the problem lies.
Yeah.
So the first love is loving the problems you solve. The product can change. It can always change. It can always mutate. But the specificity of why I bring love the product is ensuring that you're not selling a piece of crap. Like you're not causing problems by having someone pick up your product, because then there's no way you'll get excited about selling it unless you genuinely don't care. And I don't think that makes you quite a decent human being. So if you want to come from a place of love and you love the problem solving first, you love the client that you're solving it for, now the product is being built to reinforce those first two loves. And when you get clear on the impact, the client, and the product, you've done more work than most people that are in sales think about when they just start learning the process of selling without caring about the impact that it makes.
Right. Okay, cool. Thank you for explaining that. All right. Number 4, loving the...
I already said it in passing for those who picked up on it, but it's process. So once you love the impact, you love the client, you love the product, you can fall in love with the process of selling. That's where your scripts, your procedures, your protocols, all of it makes sense, because it's not about manipulation. It's about having empathy. It's about speaking the language that's necessary for people to realize the problems you're going to solve in their life by them having this product in their hands. And so, yes, learn the techniques, go for sales training, connect with your sales individuals as well so you can work together as a team. Start caring more about the customers. Use any tools that allows to have more automation, shorten your sales cycles. All the processes of sales become beautiful tools to make sure more people get the solution, solve their problems, and you can grow as well.
I feel like we can talk about process for a long time. But so the question, I guess, if your process causes tension between the sales team and the customer's team, a lot of SEs or a lot of people in general, like they just drop everything. It's like, oh, whatever you want. So how does one maintain their process while still enabling the customer and make that's a long podcast on its own, but I don't know. Do you have a thought about that?
Here's what I would say. The purpose of the sales engineer, right, is to maximize the results for the client, right? Like whatever the salesperson might be making a bunch of bold promises, but the engineer needs to come in and put the brakes on any other promises that might not be feasible. They also ask a lot more qualifying questions. So they almost work for the client to make sure that there's really a match. And so the output of this sales engineer is that you're going to ensure higher quality delivery and satisfaction from clients, right?
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to selling the process is making sure engineers know their place and know their role. And you're on the same team. You're trying to maximize not just sales, but success stories. And your qualifying questions that you bring in, your challenges that you bring in, builds even more confidence from the client, gets the salespeople to learn as well that there's promises they can and cannot make, and innovate the product in the process too.
I was thinking more about in the terms of there's a pre-sales process, there's a sales engineering process. For example, in my company, I don't do demo on the first call with a customer, right? The customer may want a demo on the first call. So how do you overcome that? Like, hey, customer wants that, sales engineer doesn't want it. Salesperson's kind of torn, like, hey, I want to make sure the customer is happy, and my SE is kind of being like, standing in their ground. And I guess the goal would be how to explain to the customer, like, hey, you want a demo? I can demo. You just won't get anything out of it because it's I'm not demoing anything for you. I'm sending you a YouTube video basically.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
you got to sit with all stakeholders and kind of understand the process purpose. So why are you not doing demos on the first call? Probably because it gets a client to just view the tools. They don't know what to do with it. And then they log off. They never come back. There's some data.
It could be a complicated tool that they would need very customized stuff for them, and just like showing them. And it's not a car. Like, you don't just show a car. You're looking under the hood. Well, yeah. So I guess that's my point on working the process.
Everything can be explained with a proper why. And so in this case, the customer just wants to understand why he's not getting a demo, even though he feels that's what he wants. And so that would more than likely sit on the salesperson that needs to have a proper scripted response that would probably go along the lines of, listen, we've done a lot of demos, which actually caused more anxiety to our customers. And we realize that when we do this one step where we get more clear on what you're looking for, we're going to not waste your time on a demo. We'll know exactly if it's even worth doing. So you don't need to do an additional meeting. How does that sound? So
I love that you came up with that on the spot, because that's the process that most sales engineers use. Like, hey, I know you wanted a demo. I'm just not sure what to demo for you. And this could be a waste of both of our time. So if we can invest a little bit of time ahead of time, and so I can understand what you want, I'll be able to show you a demo that will reflect your problems, not somebody else's. And hopefully that will be okay.
So it's a scripting issue, and it comes from your practice. So you've had those objections. So like, what is it in terms of the customer? So, again, the process will come from the lens of understanding the customer, speaking language and their benefits. They don't care. Like, if you tell them, well, I don't want to do a demo because it'll be a waste of my time. They don't care about you. They care about their time. So
they want the demo so that they don't have to come back to another call only to see that it doesn't work for them.
Exactly.
So they're in a hurry to make a decision also. So
yep.
Yeah. All right. And the last different love of sale.
The last love of selling. Any guesses? We talked about impact, client, product, and the process of selling. Is there any love missing here?
Commission.
I love the commission. I like it, but that's not the answer, although it kind of fits into it in some way. But I will make the reveal. It's self-love. I worked in self-development. And so, yes, self-love ends up being the last love of selling. And it's actually the most important thing. I go through this whole framework, but at the end of the day, it's this self-love, understanding that you can do well. You're okay with doing sales. You won't be rejected, left alone. You can grow into anything and do it well. And it comes with practice. And if you understand that, with the first 4 loves in place, you're going to grow. You're going to have emotional ups and downs. And I think that's a beauty of sales, is your growth path ends up quite accelerated. But, always remember that you're out there doing your best. And if you start with that foot forward, you're going to be walking in a straight line.
Nice. Okay. This is when I usually go to the not so fire round, which is 4 questions I ask every guest, but it seems that we're a little bit short on time. So I'm just going to ask you the last 2 questions, because I believe you've already answered the first 2, which was, what do you love about what you do and what would you change? And you seem to have done a lot of that. So the third question is, what is there a resource you would recommend for people struggling with this? I know your book is going to be available on the show notes. Is there anything else that helped you get to this point?
Well, if you're interested in these 5 loves, I could do something for your audience. Because I actually have a challenge that I walk people through, these 5 separate loves, where you get to reflect on all of these and go through some like training videos and everything. It's usually something I sell, but if any of your listeners are interested, they can just connect with me on LinkedIn and just tell me they heard of me on this podcast, and I'll give them a free ticket to the course. And then they can go absolutely through it, and you'll actually review the fears and then get clear on all the loves and selling. And you'll leave with a roadmap that you can look at every time you start the day. And you're like, that's why I'm waking up, and that's why I'm going to crush it.
Sounds good. So I'll leave your LinkedIn also in the show notes so that people can connect with you.
But I will say, when you do connect, you need to add a note. So you connect, add a note, tell me you heard me on this podcast and you want your freebie, and I'll make sure to send it to you.
Nice. What do you do if people don't add a note in general? Not this audience.
I don't accept them.
You don't accept.
I think they end up following me, but I won't accept them because I get too many contacts with no notes, and I'm like, I don't know who you are. And so I'll assume that they're following me, and I think I switched to a creator account, so follow is an easier thing. But I have
Okay.
like a ton of connection requests with no notes. I just won't accept them because I don't know who they are.
Nice. Good. That's good feedback. Okay, the last question that I wanted to ask about, the second to last question. Is there a habit you're working on to continue with your self-improvement?
Well, for self-improvement, I have a lot of them. Given that I've been in personal development, one of the things I have is an accountability group with some men. So we're three guys. We meet every single week. We set weekly goals, monthly goals, quarterly goals, annual goals. And we just always have a touch point every single week to push ourselves towards what we want to achieve in life. And so with that come with daily habits, some things we want to achieve. And so being in that kind of men's circle has always been powerful. So yeah, as far as growing, that's it. And more, I'd say less consistent, but just as an activity coming up, I have a Spartan race, which is an obstacle course race coming up in Thailand in 2 weeks. So that motivates me to keep training, keep physically fit, and that keeps my mind fit and keeps me productive too.
How long? How long is the mud? The Spartan
Tough
race? Is it?
Mudder. Spartan Right is the baby. So I've done many of them. I've done the beast. I've done the supers. This one's a sprint. But what I'm doing is I'm doing the sprint in the competitive arena to see if I can be in the top. And then right after I'm done my race, my girlfriend's doing her first Spartan race. So I'm doing the race one more time in the open class on the same day. So it'll be 2 times 5 kilometers.
Yeah, so it's 5K. The baby is 5K. It's not
The
like
baby.
it's not a walk in the park. It's the actual run
Well,
with obstacles.
you compare it to a beast, which was the 21K.
Yeah,
That one leaves scars mentally.
yeah. Well, I'm starting to run, and I did my first 5K like a couple months ago in 37 minutes. So, and that was without
Congratulations, man.
obstacles. Oh, thank you. Without obstacles. So a baby for me in Spartan race where I'm going to be doing burpees on every challenge pretty much.
We're getting ready for those too, man.
Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure having you on, Jason. Any final words before you go, or is there a question you were hoping I was going to ask you but I didn't?
No, I think we covered some of the essentials. This was a really fun interview. Sales engineers, as I mentioned before the call, I've always had great experiences. I think it's an important role. I'm glad that there's a niche podcast for sales engineers. I think this is fantastic that you've done this.
Thank you.
And I just hope that, for everyone that's been listening, you can bring a little bit more love in your sales activities. And I'm hoping this was, as I promised, not a waste of your time and a good time at that. So, yeah, I look forward to connecting with any of you who's had an impact and wants to go through the challenge. Just find me on LinkedIn and look forward to speaking.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. We'll talk soon. All right, that's the end of the show. Thank you, Jason, for coming on. There's a lot of things that we talked about today. I shared a lot of my own experiences that confirm whatever Jason was talking about, at least to me. So I'd love to hear your experiences. Are there any aha moments that you guys received or that you received when started working as a sales engineer? Did your view of salespeople in general shift internally or externally? I'm very curious about that. So let me know if you're looking for help to become better SEs, to overcome some of your own mental hurdles. Check out the SE hotline. It is there for you. And I'm just going to stop here. So I really enjoyed talking to Jason. I hope to talk to him again. Let me know what you think, and I will see you next time. Peace. Oh, actually, I'm signing off.